Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for this, the second FIT International Translation Day panel discussion, organised by the FIT External Partnership Standing Committee, with the very kind participation of our panellists, Tex Texan, Christina Valentini, Professor Ivan Bratko, and Marie Dewar. So let's start. Today, we will be debating our title, Translation and Art Worth Protecting, the Possibilities and Pitfalls for Developing Good Translation as an Art and a Science. Now, just to set up the discussion for you, this year's ITD theme is based around issues of copyright, of language rights, and about the future of the profession within the context of the recent technological change that's been affecting all of us. So it also includes the latest technological developments in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and large language models, and improved neural machine translation. And all of these have had a very profound impact of change on all areas of our profession. And with great change comes great opportunity, but also opportunity cost. So what are the opportunities and what are the costs? And how will we chart our way to the future? So again, thank you for joining us today to explore these questions about copyright, technology, and the future. It's a very obsessive topic at the moment, and that's because we're all trying to make sense of it and how it affects us and our work. And the best way to do that is through discussion and by sharing our thoughts and experiences, and by listening to experts like those we have on our panel today. And so with that, I would like to hand over to our panelists and get their thoughts on these questions. Remember that you can put your questions into the Q&A when they come to mind at any moment. So now we're going to have our first panelist, Tex Texan, a globalization and technology expert. Now, Tex, who is an industry thought leader and consultant specializing in software globalization services, has contributed to several internationalization standards and open source software. He is also currently a technology advisor to Translation Commons, where he is architecting their language digitization initiative, bringing the languages of Indigenous communities to the digital systems. Most recently, Tex has been developing keyboards and related standards for Indigenous languages. So thank you very much, Tex. The floor is yours.
So good morning or afternoon. For me, it's 5 in the morning here in California. So let's see. My talk is Surfing the AI Tsunami, and artificial intelligence is a tsunami. A tsunami is a massive force. It's spread out over a wide area. It covers many different terrains, and it changes the landscape forever, often violently and destructively. And similarly, AI is impacting every discipline. Discussion of AI and how it is changing every human activity is now pervasive. Like the floods of a tsunami covering land, AI gets into every corner of humanity. This is in part because it is accessible to individuals, not just corporations. If you are a business, you need to use AI today as your clients, your suppliers, management, and employees demand it or consider you inefficient, if not outdated if you don't. This is true even though AI is evolving so fast, it is hard to separate the hype from the reality. It also has created outsized expectations and fears. So how do we surf this AI tsunami and continue to thrive? Let's look briefly at the history of other technology revolutions to see what we can learn, what applies. Let's learn more about AI, and let's plan to thrive in the new environment. So I've been in this industry for more than 35 years. I'm mostly focused on internationalization. When I started, most of us worked on Europeanization, modifying software so it would support the different markets in Europe. That quickly became commoditized, and then we moved on to Japanization, and then as Japanese software or Japanese language and culture was supported, We moved on to other markets in Asia, and all of this has become commoditized today, thanks to standards like Unicode and ICU and the Common Locale Data Repository. All of this internationalization is embedded in platforms and libraries and program languages. So today, internationalization is performed by generalists rather than engineers with specific language or cultural knowledge. The same thing is true for localization. Many of the activities of translation have also been commoditized thanks to spell checkers and grammar checkers, translation memory and machine translation, and the tools that we use both for translation and for collaboration and being able to work remotely. And the changes for localization have also created new roles, such as post-editing and managing translation memory, as well as a number of lost roles for certain types of editors, and it's created pricing pressure, as well as reduced need for translators and interpreters. So today, many people are still in denial that AI can replace them. They will make arguments that they are, and you may hear this today, that they are unique and valued creatives. They can't be replaced. And I know this is what my mom told me, but from a business perspective, that's not necessarily true. And you will also hear arguments that AI is poor quality, it hallucinates, and so forth. But if you look at other technologies, even translation memory and machine translation, they were poor quality too in the beginning. But they improve over time, and now they can do many more translation tasks and with more language pairs, more or less reliably, with good quality depending on your application. AI will follow the same trend, not only for the task of translation, but for related tasks. So as, for example, process scheduling, execution of the tasks, and a more dynamic interaction with content. So we need to accept this reality and anticipate the future. So as a part of that, I won't go through all of these bullets because of the brief time, but some of the things that I hear recommended, because people are concerned that AI, by scanning content, people's proprietary information or their intellectual property can be stolen simply once it's available somewhere on the web. So that people are recommending watermarking and putting some unique wording or other tactics and so forth in order to be able to recognize when their content is being taken. And I've also seen recommendations not to develop or share content in the cloud, use encryption, all of these kinds of steps. However, we need to understand how AI works, and AI does not store literal data in its memory, like as translation memory does or machine translation does. Instead, it converts text to thousands of parameters, and it forms a kind of a universal language. So it doesn't capture text you might publish or text that's being recorded from interpreters and store it directly and then return it directly. It's a different model. And also, AI is not a monolith. So today, people are creating artificial intelligence systems for different purposes, and then it's possible to integrate them in different ways with other AIs, so you get a more comprehensive system. I will, though, I do want to distinguish that for Indigenous communities, it does make sense to have private AI and private repositories for data. We think of large languages such as English as collections of abstract terms and symbols, and that makes sense. With languages like that, the ties to culture are heavily diluted. But for an Indigenous community, they may only have a very small corpus, and it may include writings and messages from respected ancestors and key rituals and sacred beliefs. And for Indigenous communities, there are concerns of cultural appropriation, dilution of their culture, transformation of their culture as others make use of their language or their ideas, and they're also very concerned with being mocked and disrespected. So for that reason, Indigenous communities may use private repositories in AI and be reluctant to share their language content for others to learn and make use of. So for these reasons, it can make sense to have a data officer that is responsible for ensuring the respect and the rights and provenance and so forth, and give the community ongoing control and access. So that is something to be considered. So my point is artificial intelligence is here, if not coming. We should accept that reality, and to plan for it, we can do a few things. One, I would suggest that you not consider your job to be your identity. That can be a hard switch to make. I very much think of myself as an internationalization engineer, but to navigate the changes in technology, you may need to be open to other approaches and to know your passion and your strengths and weaknesses so that you can modify how you think about going forward and where your career should be. And then around that, learn about artificial intelligence, what it can do, not only today, but to understand tomorrow where it will be. And so you have to learn about at least at a high level how AI works. You should experience applying AI in different ways, including attempting to innovate uses of AI so that you get a handle of what may be possible. You really should devote time to using it to become current in it. And as you think about it, anticipate that artificial intelligence will continue to improve. And you should look, as I mentioned briefly, internationalization and localization, but you should also look at how technology impacted other industries and created opportunities and also dead ends. And then within the translation and interpretation space, you may want to consider niches that will extend your career. For example, if you work in specific domains or areas where there are only small corpuses available, or maybe areas where language is evolving rapidly or uniquely. And then also working on the back end of artificial intelligence. How do you manage an AI system? How to be very efficient at using AI, such as what are the optimal prompts and so forth. So with that, I hope that stirs some ideas, and I expect maybe there are a couple elements were controversial, but I think follow your passion. You can succeed. I know because AI told me so. Thanks, everyone. And yes, the images were created by AI.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tex, for your thoughts on AI. I think that's a really interesting perspective that we need to not just be current and speak AI as much as we speak our other languages, but also, it's about the identity that we have, and that's changing too. So thank you again. All right, so now I'd like to introduce our next panelist, Christina Valentini. Now, Christina is head of the terminology unit at Sports Support Section for PCT Translation Division at the World Intellectual Property Organization, also known as WIPO. Now, Christina designs and develops terminology resources, such as the wonderful WIPO Pearl, and also guidelines, terminology workflow management, and she designs and coordinates terminology projects. She has a PhD in languages, cultures, and intercultural communication from the University of Bologna in Italy. And since 2016, she's been appointed as the WIPO expert participating in the activities of the ISO Technical Committee 37, Language and Technology. She is the author of several conference communications and articles on terminology in the field of patents. So thank you very much, Christina, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alison. So as Tex has just reminded us, the adoption of these new AI tools is today something that translators and language professionals cannot avoid. So in my intervention today, I would like to emphasize the role of terminology in the field of translation at this particular time of growing automation of the profession, and why it is important that translators take an interest in terminology. And I would like to start with a statement. Knowledge of terminology principles is crucial for the training of translators and for them to make effective, and I would also add critical use of these new AI technologies, particularly translators that specialize in technical and legal fields and in the patent translation field, which increasingly involves post-editing of machine translation, and as we are witnessing here at WIPO. But the question I would like to answer first is, can terminology tasks be carried out effectively by AI? The answer is yes, but not fully yet. There are several ways in which AI can assist translators when performing terminology work. For example, neural machine translation can be useful to find out equivalents, particularly if trained with domain-specific data and data that is of high quality, translations made by humans. These NMT output, however, tends to be more or less accurate depending on the language combination and the field of specialization. So there are some limitations in using NMT in certain languages. WIPO terminology portal, WIPO Pearl, offers the option to see alongside human validated terms equivalents that are generated using WIPO Translate, our internally developed NMT engine. And it also offers a disclaimer that clearly indicates that these terms are generating using AI or NMT, and gives the option to the user to verify occurrence of these terms in authentic texts, in patents, originally written in that language by linking the terms to a patent scope, which is our WIPO patent database. Then there are other tasks that translators may do in connection with terminology. For example, they may need to identify select terms to build glossaries ahead of big translation projects, for example, or to research the meaning of a source language term in depth to verify, for example, whether an equivalent is correct. Here, the new generative AI tools based on large language models are very promising and show the potential to help translators with several tasks, such as term extraction, checking of meaning, checking of synonyms. However, the use of such terminology, AI tools in terminology work is not yet ascertained and is very experimental. Studies do not yet exist as to the advantage that the using of such new AI tools would bring compared to the use of traditional, for example, term extractors. From the research that we carried out here at WIPO, myself and my colleagues, I could say that translators cannot yet rely on the output of generative AI for these kind of tasks. And in order to be able to get good and valuable information from such tools, and to assess also whether the output that AI tools create is trustworthy and true, now more than ever, solid foundations in terminology, principles, and theory are needed. And let's see why. Terminology, at its very essence, is the opposite of generative AI. Terminology is the discipline that studies, collects, and organizes terms that can be used by humans and machines over and over again. Terminology is about documenting the usage of terms in authentic texts to find the best term that could designate a given concept, an idea, in a specific language. As such, terminology work is similar to the work of a journalist or a historian who needs to verify the sources, okay? And the large language model engines currently available are very good at telling us the what, are very good at giving us lots of information and presenting this information in a nice way, but they cannot tell us yet the how and how they've come about with certain answers, the rationale, the logic, and more important than all, the evidence they used. In addition, generative AI answers are ephemeral, short-lived, not repeatable. Terminology work is about finding answers and creating resources that are long-lasting and that can be used to improve AI output by leveraging the high-quality data that exists in terminology resources as training data. So again, in our experience here at WIPO, the work that we do in terminology and the terminology glossaries are used as training data to improve the output of WIPO Translate, for example. Last, and this is, I think, a very important and crucial point for the discussion today, is that terminology teaches how to understand a subject matter, how to acquire specialized knowledge. This is not an easy process and involves skills that fall in the realm of logic. Terminology analyzes words, association of words, and makes abstraction from them to understand the concept. In terminology theory, the concept is defined as the unit of knowledge. The concept, in turn, is always related to an object. And in terminology theory, an object is anything that can be perceived or conceived by a human. Terminology work is thus based on concept analysis, which also means comparing concepts across languages, because languages, as we all know, conceptualize the world differently. Generative AI tools are not yet capable of doing this because they still miss an important human faculty, which is the ability to perceive, the ability to become aware of reality, to discern and observe. Hence, AI answers are not yet comprehensive or fully adequate when it comes to concept analysis. To sum up, I think that terminology training equips translators with a range of key skills that can help them make good use of AI tools. It reinforces their knowledge of linguistics, particularly of morphology and semantics. It helps translators develop the ability of drawing meaningful conclusions from the observation of data and learning how to extract knowledge from it. And this is a much needed skill, especially when we think about interaction with generative AI tools like the art of prompting. It reinforces the translator's ability to navigate the ocean of information that we are exposed to and distinguish authentic sources from non-reliable ones. Hence, I would like to conclude by saying that teaching of terminology is more than ever today, with the advent of these new AI tools, an asset in translators training curricula. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Christina, especially for that insight on the logic and abstraction of terminology that will always elude AI for the near future. Okay, thank you very much. And I would just remind all of the audience to drop their questions into the Q&A. As you have them, please don't wait till the end. All right, wonderful. So this is Marie Dure, and until very recently, Marie was head of interpreting at the United Nations Office, Geneva. And Marie has 30 years career in interpreting, which spans over 12 years freelance work for UN agencies, the European Union, and the private market, up until 2001, when she joined UN headquarters as a staff interpreter. Marie joined the United Nations Office at Geneva as Chief of Interpretation Service in December 2017, after nearly 10 years at the United Nations Office at Vienna, initially as Chief of the French booth and then as Chief Interpreter. And before her retirement in June 2024, Marie was also the UN Geneva Anti-Racism Advocate and Chair of the Working Group on Racism. So thank you, Marie. Please, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much for this introduction. So as you just said, Alison, I am an interpreter. I am not a translator. So what I'm going to say will apply to interpretation and maybe not to translation, because I don't know enough about translation. So AI, actually, as we say it, AI is interpreting words, while interpreters are interpreting ideas. So interpreters, I mean, human interpreters are here to stay, because skilled interpreters go beyond words. They need to delve into the underlying nuances. They need to understand the subtleties of a message. They need to understand the context, the cultural implications, the emotional undertones. They need to be able to convey the true meaning of what the speaker is saying. But can AI be used to help interpreters? Definitely yes, because AI can be used for preparation, for example, for terminology management, terminology database. It can be used to extract numbers, to find documents, to find terminology, and what we call artificial boothmate, that the AI can help you with prompting of numbers, names, or technical terms. But it will be important to remember that AI tools need to be used by interpreters to help them prepare, but they should reduce the cognitive load of interpreters, not increase it. Because, interpretation is, we all know that it's a very complex and high-demanding process, because you need to listen to the source language and then deliver it into the target language while, working with your documents and all of that, and you need to do it simultaneously. And you also need to take into account the accent, the speed, the written text, and all of this. So there is a mental load there. And so we need to make sure that when AI is used, it's reducing the cognitive load and it's not increasing it. So as Tex said at the beginning, AI is coming, but human interpreters are here to stay as well. So, I would just conclude by quoting what was said once by a former colleague. Interpreters are not going to be replaced by technology, but they will be replaced by interpreters that choose technology. That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And that's an encouraging message as well, that we need to work alongside AI. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be replaced by it, but nor do we ignore it, because it's coming. So yes, we can work together, collaboratively, as it were. Well, thank you very much, Marie. Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Ivan Bratko, Professor of Computer Science at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. Now, Professor Bratko's research extends across all areas of artificial intelligence, including machine learning, qualitative modeling and reasoning, intelligent robotics, heuristic methods, and various applications of machine learning in medicine and control of dynamic systems. Professor Bratko is interested in issues of ethics of artificial intelligence, including explainable AI and the bias of machine learning. He's participated in related activities in UNESCO and the Global Partnership for AI. He's published books and scientific papers on AI, and he is a member of the Slovene Academy of Sciences and Arts, a fellow of the European Association for AI, and a member of Academia Europaea. So thank you very much, Professor Bratko. We'd love to give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. The topic that I want to talk about is it is about large language models and some particular component which seems to be insufficiently represented. And that particular component is the ability to reason. Now, why is that ability important? Here's the context. There have been recent breakthroughs in AI under these many terms, deep learning, generative AI, large language models, and this enabled very significant applications in many areas, including education, broad areas, and including translation. And obviously, this will considerably change the nature of human work. And the division of work now will be split between humans and computers. And what is expected is that the routine tasks will be taken over by machine tools, and more demanding tasks and creative tasks by human experts. But the borderline in this division of work between machines and humans is not so clear, and it's not easy to predict. But it will very much depend on the abilities of generative AI. Of course, if generative AI becomes really very good, then in some areas people will probably be just completely squeezed out. And the big question is, on whose answer this depends, is: has generative AI attained the level of artificial general intelligence? Now, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is considers AI which is good at all tasks, at difference from more so-called more usual AI, which can be good at just some type of task, like proving theorems or predicting floods or medical diagnosis, and so on. Now, the question: are large language models already there? So have they attained the level of artificial general intelligence? That very much depends on the question: can large language models reason? And now, 2 years ago, AI experts, even the most famous ones, just dismissed that answer by saying GPT-2 doesn't know what it is talking about, GPT-2 being the generative AI of that time. But now when GPT-4 appeared, well, all these AI experts completely changed their mind. They became cautious, and they say, well, now we don't know. And still that answer is that is the answer today. We don't know how far we can go. And now I have been following investigation by Sebastian Bubeck about GPT-4 in the light of the question, what happens with the ability of AGI, and what is the capability of reasoning in GPT-4. And I took some of the material from his very enjoyable talk entitled Sparks of AGI. Now, with this title, he wanted to indicate that GPT-4 is showing some sparks of AGI. So there are some indications of that that level has been attained, but maybe not completely. And the thing which does seem to be missing is the ability to reason. Now, the Bubeck says about that, yes, GPT-4 was trained just to predict the next word. So trained to do something really very simple. But we all know that okay, by having learned that, it became really so powerful. And also in doing that, it may have built an internal representation that we do not understand. And that internal representation may include elements of intelligence and reasoning. So maybe this capability has already emerged inside, but it is so difficult. And this is again a quote from Bubeck: "Beware of 1 trillion dimensional parameter space." So there are 1 trillion of parameters, numerical values that GPT-4 had to adjust during learning, and okay, this may have surprises and something which will be very hard to understand and analyze. So instead of going into this enormous structure, Bubeck conducted a large number of experiments with GPT-4 and maybe probably other large language models. And I'm here going to go very briefly through a few results which seem to be interesting. So this is a summary of these experiments. In one of the experiments, GPT-4 was given the question: can you build a stable structure using a book, a laptop, 9 eggs, and a nail? Okay, there's some the eggs are sort of confusing in this. How to use eggs to build a stable structure, but in this particular case, the GPT-4 did remarkably well, so it solved the problem very good. Another interesting question was: can you write a proof of infinitude of primes with every line that rhymes? So in other words, the question to GPT was to present Euclid's mathematical proof about prime numbers, and then turn this proof into a poem. And again, this was done brilliantly by GPT-4. Now, here we have one more task, or one more experiment, which is about a not very difficult mathematical puzzle. So we are given this identity, this formula. Nothing very difficult in this formula. And here's the question. We would like to make the right-hand side equal 106. And then the question is, how should the left-hand side of this in this formula be modified with a sort of minimal change, so that this formula the quality is still preserved. Now, here for human, it is interesting that somehow humans are capable of finding a really interesting shortcut by noticing that the right-hand side needs to be increased by 14, so to become 106. And now 14 is can be divided by 7. And luckily we have a 7 here. So we just need to do something with the multiplier of 7. Now we need twice 7 to increase this left-hand side. So just changing 4 into 6 will do the trick. Now here, okay, this is human-like solution, and it does require a little bit of mathematical reasoning, but here GPT-4 completely failed. It produced a wrong solution, and then further conversation with GPT-4 showed that actually it was never close to getting to a correct solution. A little bit more later, I attended a workshop and a discussion by Paul Van Ecke, who suggested another puzzle to test the reasoning capability. And that's a puzzle that probably some of you will be able to recognize. It's about wolf, goat, and cabbage. We have, and there is a farmer who has these three items, and the farmer would like to cross the river with all these items using a small boat. This boat can only take the farmer and one of the items, so several crossings will be needed, and at the same time there will be a constraint that the wolf and the goat will never have to be left alone, because in that case the wolf is going to eat the goat, and similar between the goat and cabbage. Okay, presented with this puzzle, GPT-4 actually turns out it knows the puzzle, and it produces the solution immediately and correctly. But the problem then occurs when GPT-4 is given a simpler puzzle. For example, you can say, well, what if the goat is not hungry? So cabbage is safe, and will that can that fact be used in simplifying the solution? And now in that case, GPT-4 says yes, we can do that, and produces a solution. But then in that solution plan, the goat gets eaten by the wolf. So when you say yes, but that unfortunately doesn't work, the model says, oh, no problem, yes, I will fix the solution, and produces another solution when again the goat gets eaten, and so on. So in the end, it does turn out that it doesn't, in fact, it does not understand the task, and the ability to reason is really not very good. So to conclude, at present, it seems that this important feature, ability to reason in generative AI, does not have sufficient reasoning ability. But very interestingly, in symbolic AI, which is a completely different approach to AI, we already have powerful reasoning algorithms, and they have been around for a while. The natural idea would be, can we combine generative AI and symbolic AI, and we get the winning combination. And that has become known recently as neurosymbolic AI. But it seems that these two approaches, generative AI and symbolic AI, they are so different that it is difficult to make such a combination. So we are not there yet, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Bratko. That's quite a lot to absorb, but really fascinating. And I guess while you're here, we've had lots of really fantastic questions in the chat, and I certainly have one for you. Can AI be creative?
That's a very good question, and quite a few people are interested in that. And I noticed especially the people who are in arts. And by creative, it means that whether AI can produce objects or content which have in a creative way, and that the results of generative AI would have some aesthetic value. I noticed that the people in arts are not very excited about that. They would like that this is preserved for humans. But I have some, it's not that I have seen many exciting examples of AI creativity and producing something which is of real value. But I do have some examples that do indicate that is indeed possible. But those examples come from my other field, my hobby, which is playing chess. And in chess, you can play chess in a creative way. So and so that everybody enjoys it, full of ideas, or you can do it in a boring style. Now with computers, the computers initially they were bad, but then they were improving and they started to beat humans, but they were beating humans in a sort of boring style, so that the machines were winning just by not making mistake, and waiting for the human to make a mistake. And so in those games, the computers were winning, but all the fun that was created in those games was by humans. Now everything changed when AlphaZero happened, which was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when AI started to learn how to play chess, and AlphaZero now was playing very creative chess. It was chess that humans really loved, I mean, we love it. And now the situation is that the AlphaZero wins and plays plays very creatively with all the ideas, and humans now play boring chess compared to AlphaZero. AlphaZero has had a successor program called Lila Chess, and about half a year ago, I found chess commentary on YouTube by saying Lila Chess played an immortal game, meaning an achievement that among humans means the best possible. So okay, that was a long answer, but really, yes, it is possible that this AI does create beautiful things.
Thank you. I think you've used a word that's probably not used enough when we talk about AI, and that's fun. What kind of future do we want? Fun or efficient? Or can we have both? We have a number of questions. So I think perhaps the first question that we might ask is for Christina, about AI and terminology. And one of the questions that I would really like to put forward is, how does the World Intellectual Property Organization contribute to the development and the dissemination of terminology? And, what kind of knowledge and skills are in the field of translation?
Thank you for the question, Alison. So WIPO offers a terminology training to its translation staff on a continuous basis. And we also have a program for young people whereby young master students, graduates come at WIPO to work specifically on terminology. And they are recruited from all over the world, and the call for applications opens up in January. In addition, WIPO has also a terminology collaboration program with a large network of universities worldwide that helps spread knowledge of terminology theory and also intellectual property and patents and patent translation in languages and cultures where terminology is not traditionally taught, and thus helping universities to enhance their academic translation curricula. And these students that participate in these collaborations they could do it in different ways. They are either doing that as part of their master's dissertations, or they participate in a specific project assignments that are carried out as part of their specialized translation classes, patent translation classes, data mining classes, language technology courses, etc. So, and the idea here is to offer them guidelines, including a self-study online course, and also guidelines on their work as an assessment of the work that they do for us and with us. And they typically are contributing to WIPO Pearl, to enrich WIPO Pearl with new concepts and terms. And if the terms are good and the work is good, the information is deemed ready for publication and for integration in WIPO Pearl. And I think we also have other collaborations with governmental agencies and where we work in specific projects, and we release glossaries in specific topics. And last, I would say that we also promote terminology by participating in fora such as FIT or ISO to help spread the knowledge of terminology and shape also the future of terminology.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. And another question, and this one is for Tex. It's thanks very much for your presentation. Could you please give us some information on the difference in the translation process between generative AI and neural machine translation on the technological and methodological point of view?
I'm not sure I have a good answer for that. I think it's a little bit gray. Neural machine translation uses networks, so does the generative AI. I think the generative AI has expanded the number of parameters that are accessible to it. And I think neural machine translation still uses more of the literal data behind it, whereas artificial intelligence, the generative AI is much more focused on a parameterization using thousands of parameters to generate text or images or voice and the like. So I don't have a more specific answer for you.
Wonderful. I have another question that's been put forward for you, Tex, while we have you here. It says, given that we will have to inevitably involve AI in the translation work, what is the value proposition of the human translator when the client can simply bypass the human translator and directly use an AI-enabled translation tool and post-edit themselves?
I think that's a question for everyone in the audience to try and identify where they have a unique value that can be maintained. So I understood the points that were being made about the specific skills in terminology management, and everyone is going to have this opinion, as I mentioned, that their work is specialized. When as an example, in the early 1900s, there was a role of cobblers, people that created shoes. They were custom designed, and also they were very expensive. Not everyone could afford shoes. In the poorer classes, children and so forth might go barefoot because they were expensive. And in the Industrial Revolution, when it became possible to manufacture shoes and make them available more widely, from what I've read, the cobblers said, well, you can't replace me because what I do is a very specific job. It's a custom fit and it's quality. And this manufactured shoes, they're not the same quality. However, as we all know, most cobblers have gone out of business, and that's because custom fitting, really high quality was not as important as price, ease of replacement, and other factors, so that manufactured shoes became something that was acceptable. It may not have been as good as shoes that were custom made and tailored. So I think when you evaluate translation, and today I can use my phone to get translation and interpretation. Now, you're all going to say the quality isn't there, it's not always accurate, but for many purposes, it is good enough, and it's going to continue to get better. So where is the value? I think we each need in our roles to decide how we can provide a value that AI doesn't provide today, and where we might provide value as AI continues to improve. So I know it's not a message that everyone likes to hear, but we can't ignore how the technology is changing the world around us. And I will add one more point, because it was suggested that there are things AI can't do in terms of discerning the logic and the conceptual information behind it. But today we have artificial intelligence that can write code, can do math, can do physics, and also there is built in now into artificial intelligence some diagnostic capability where it can explain what logic it used and how it came to the conclusions that it came to. And I would expect the same thing for terminology and translation. At some point, artificial intelligence will also be able to look at the text that it's generating and explain somewhat the rationale behind it, or how it is considering a term, given the usage it has been trained on. So give that some thought. And I'm open to ideas of challenging, what I'm saying here, but I'm trying to look to the future.
Thank you. Well, perhaps just as we have bespoke cobblers these days who make top-end shoes, we will have bespoke translators and interpreters who use technology to their advantage. So maybe that's also a value proposition that might be interesting for the future.
Absolutely, Alison. But it's a question of numbers, though, right? I don't know how many thousands of translators there are today, but the number of bespoke translators that we might need is not going to be the same number.
In the way that we have very few bespoke cobblers.
Yes.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we've got really some fabulous questions, and I think I have quite a few for Marie. Marie, which AI tools are you currently using to prepare for your interpreting work? I know that you're no longer, but what AI tools did you use with your UN work?
Yeah, my answer will be very quick. I don't use AI tools. I still prepare the old-fashioned way, and I don't use AI tools. But I am aware that, for the young interpreters, the interpreters starting, they will need to be using technology in order to, and I'm more than aware of this. But I don't use them myself. I don't use them.
And also, there's another question which sort of follows on from what you've just mentioned about, students and young people coming through. And how do you foresee the developments of AI being used for training of new translators?
I think, it's not only AI, technology in general will need to be factored in trainings. But training of interpreters has changed over the year. Training of interpreters now, it's not the same training as 30 years ago. Things have changed. For example, when I did my training, so more than 35 years ago, simultaneous with text was not being taught because people were not reading text, because there were no photocopy machine at the time. Or they were, but they were not being used, so people were not reading. But now people are reading, so you need to teach students how to do simultaneous with text, which is a technique in itself, and that technique was not being taught 35 years ago. So the training will evolve because this is life. And technology will need to be factored in. It's like, remote interpretation. In some schools, they are teaching students how to work remotely using RSI. And this is after COVID. But 10 years ago, nobody was thinking about remote interpretation. So technology will need to be factored in no matter what in training. So the training will evolve, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so one other question. It says, as an educator and of translating and interpreting students, what should I tell them about their future and what can they do with their skills? So I guess this is a question to all of the panelists as well as Marie.
Yes, as I said, interpreters will not be replaced by technology, but they will definitely be replaced by interpreters that use technology. And this is the bottom line. So you need to tell your students that they need to be able to use new technology in order to stay relevant. Now, the skill that interpreters need are the same skills that were needed 30, 40, or 50 years ago, the same skill. And in order for interpreters or young interpreters to be relevant, they need to be good. Because if you interpret and you are not good, then you will be replaced. So you need to be good. You need to be good. I think quality is a key word here, quality interpretation. Mm-hmm. So this is what you need to explain to your students. They need to be good.
Excellent. Okay, so another question, and I think this is also one, perhaps text might be, Christina, did you want to have a comment about training?
Yeah, just, I mean, I totally agree with Marie. And I mean, one of the skills that translators and interpreters would need to develop is a critical eye, also how to use these tools in a critical way, and and they would need even more solid foundations in interpreting, translation, terminology, in order to be able to see whether the output is good or not. So I think that the basics of the teaching of translation interpreting will stay the same, and we need to have good translators and interpreters in order to be able to use AI.
True. Thank you. So yes, another question. As a young translator and conference interpreter, do you think there is merit in the endeavor of learning how AI works from the ground up by studying computer science and coding first? Or would it be more efficient to limit myself to learning how to best employ them by focusing on prompt engineering? So Tex, did you have something that you might want to add about that? Or anyone else?
What I would suggest is you follow your passion. If you're interested and good at coding and understanding how computers work and have an interest in how AI works, then I would say go ahead and follow that, and I'm sure it will benefit you. On the other hand, if it's maybe not a skill that you have or enjoy, then at least learning how to make use of AI will benefit you in the career for translation. So it's not a simple recommendation one way or the other. And I think there is something to be said. You might also take a look at salaries and careers to see if that is your concern, where you might earn a better living. But that's not my first thought when I talk to my children. I tell them not to worry about that, but to find something that they're going to want to do day in, day out, many hours of the day. So sorry, I don't have a more specific answer, but that's the way I think about these things.
Thank you. And Professor Brucker, did you have something you wanted to add about that?
Yeah, yes, I very much agree with that. I noticed in the last 2 years, I also teach cognitive science, which is students who come from different areas, not from AI. They have background in linguistics or medicine or psychology. And I noticed in the last 2 years, they said we need to learn more about AI and programming in order to do our work well.
I'll ask another question, and this one is a little bit more about data and the ethical challenges in using AI in interpreting and translation assignments in public and private sectors, respectively. What's the implication on, or how do we navigate the idea of the privacy in the data, and how do clients view the issue? So also there was another question about deletion of data. that might be something that would come up in the answer. But yes, it's about the ethical use, I guess the privacy implications as well of using data and AI.
So the ethical issues are also an area that are changing today. I'll repeat what has been said elsewhere that I've learned. That data storage and data ownership, until recently, the idea was it belonged to the country that hosted the data. But the indigenous communities are making the case, especially the Maori and Iwi and New Zealand are making the case that the data ownership should belong to the community from which it was collected. And so this is an area now that is being explored. And it is not just a regulatory issue, it's also an ethical issue. So many of the indigenous communities, as I mentioned, want to be able to control the use of their language data, how it is shared, and what happens to it so that their culture can't be mocked or disrespected, or their culture appropriated and also diluted, where let's say other communities use the data in ways that is not aligned with how the indigenous community makes use of it, and then they find it's been changed. At the same time, we see lots of examples in society where it was okay to have beads and braids in your hair, and then a celebrity gets taken into account for cultural appropriation. Whereas this was something that, many tourists would do and have their hair done in a certain way. And it was used in many places, and then all of a sudden it's raised as an issue. So it's a landscape that's changing. I certainly don't have any clear guidelines as to where this belongs. One of the suggestions is that if you're training an AI, if you're making use of information, that you keep track of its provenance, where it was taken from, how it was being used, and to be able to track as it goes forward where the authorship came from, especially for those markets where you're trying to establish whether something was human generated or AI generated. This is an important issue now in photography and images, because so much AI can do so much with images, and they may start with what was a photograph and then modify it in different ways. And so you people want to make sure that their work isn't being used in something and then relabeled as AI or belonging somewhere else. So it was a little bit of a wandering area, but I think it's a area that is changing and not well understood, and there are new players trying to change the shape of that landscape. Maybe other panelists have comments on that.
No, well, I do have a related question on this idea of authorship that's been put forward for Professor Bratko, and it's about AI-generated content, and should it be required that the reader can detect that the content is generated by AI?
Yes, thank you. That's, I think, a very important question. And it is about this. We are going to be bombarded by more and more material or text or content produced by generative AI, and this is going to be very confusing. I mean, this is a super information pollution, and to as a help to orientate ourselves in this flood of information, it will be important sometimes to detect whether where this content is coming from, at least to know whether that was generated by a computer or machine generated or by a human. Okay, I also work in an organization called GPI, and in GPI we had a rather long discussion about that, and our conclusion was that it is absolutely recommendable that human readers of these contents be given a chance to detect where it is coming from. So we called that a detection mechanism. And okay, we were also in the discussion about the AI Act, European AI Act, which in the end, to our big joy, did. I mean, this requirement did enter the AI Act. So now we don't know how this is going to end, but at least the requirement is there.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have another question that's sort of related to this, you know, that admitting that technology is becoming a must for the profession. And it says, in my opinion, we should work on mutual and international laws and standards in order to take advantage of the positive side of the technology in our industry and organize the profession. So is it, you know, international regulation AI of AI desirable or possible? And, you know, will it happen in time?
Well, if I may answer this question, in my view, yes, absolutely. I agree that regulation, international regulation, is desirable. It is necessary, but it is going to be very complicated because the technology has become very complicated, and there are so many situations, different situations in which and different ways in which it is going to work. So yes, absolutely agreed. And there was also okay, some time ago, maybe 2 years ago, there was a large document put together by UNESCO on the guidelines on AI ethics. And that is an interesting document. Of course, it is not sufficiently technical, so that it doesn't say how these principles of ethics should be actually carried out. Also in legislation, but anyway, that is a very good basis for that.
I will add that today, at least here in California and elsewhere in the United States government, there are proposals. In fact, I think in California just passed something, or at least proposed something the other day, having to do with safety concerns around AI, and adding requirements for safety features to be built into AI. And this is not specific to translation interpretation, but more generally because AI is being used now to manage infrastructure and in weaponry and in other fields. And they want to add in a certain amount of controls to ensure that there is some human behind the management of these processes. So I think regulation is coming, but also at the same time, it's not clear that the regulators and the technology folks that are participating in this have a clear idea of what can be done, what should be done. So organizations like FIT and others should perhaps take a lead in trying to establish what's appropriate for translation interpretation industry, and give that consideration so that when the regulation comes, there's sensible policies to be put in place.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that yes, California seems to be very advanced in that. also due to the efforts by our colleague, Professor Stuart Rutter, from Berkeley, who has been putting forward these ideas that Tex just mentioned.
So we have a question, and I wonder, Christina, whether this might be in your specific area about the use of AI and its effects on training. And I guess specifically that might be something with this idea of distinguishing between the human and the AI generated that affects the training and in the terminology sector.
Yes, I think that, there is a key word that was used also by Dr. Bratko, which is the authenticity. So the first thing that we're looking for in terminology, but also I think elsewhere in all realms of knowledge, is to look for information that is true and authentic. And so I think that in the training of translation, of translators and interpreters, one thing would be, as I said also before, to make sure that the that they are they have the means to determine whether something is trustworthy or not. And I think that in the field of AI and in these worlds where we are inundated by information, and it's becoming more and more difficult to determine where this information comes from. And so because of the algorithms, because of AI algorithms in particular that generate this information and give prominence to certain information instead of others, then it's very, very important that the source of the information is well established and recognized, and also is recognized as authoritative. So one of the mission of the regulatory bodies would be to establish which sources are authoritative, okay, and which one could be used as primary sources for the information and for the training as well.
Wonderful, thank you. There's a quick question, and I think this might be a question for Marie, about the changes. Are you seeing a change in the strengths and the skills for young interpreters as they come through, having had some exposure to training, or at least working with AI?
What I see is that young interpreters used technology way more than interpreters of my age, for example. I used to organize a lot of, we call it dummy booth, so it's sort of coaching sessions, for 1 week. So interpreters used to come to Vienna. I was at the time working in Vienna at the UN in Vienna. For 1 week. So those were student interpreters. And I will tell them, okay, you will be working on this meeting, and I will send them the link for the documents, and I want you to prepare a glossary, and I will check your glossary on the first day. So that was 15, 16 years ago. And 15, 16 years ago, everybody was coming with a paper glossary. And slowly I could see that they were coming with a glossary on the tablets. So the glossary were no longer on paper, were no longer printed, they're all on tablets. So yes, I can see that young interpreters are more comfortable with technology than myself, for example, definitely than myself. Now, one thing I would like to emphasize, though, that the skills needed for interpreters now are the same skills that were needed 50 years ago. So I don't want young interpreters to think AI will do the job. I don't need the skills anymore. AI will help you, but you still need the skills.
Thank you. Definitely, that's a problem with AI, isn't it? The skills will diminish, and that will damage the profession. Thank you. And just another quick question for us to finish on, and I think maybe everyone may have something to help hopefully add to this. How do we involve translators, interpreters more in the development of AI tools that are related to their work? I know Marie talked about, AI should help reduce the cognitive load, and these tools should serve us. They should be tools that serve specific needs. So how do we get the translators, interpreter a little bit more involved in that development? And as I say, I hope if anyone else of the presenters would like to jump in, then please just switch your camera on.
Interpreters are getting more and more involved. So I think, they're getting more and more involved, more and more interesting. There are plenty of things going on regarding AI and interpretation, and interpreters are definitely involved. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts and ideas on all of these really interesting topics. We had loads and loads of really great questions, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get to them all. So, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much to our fantastic panelists for sharing their insights. And I'd like to thank all of you, the audience, for also attending today. So thank you to everyone who asked questions. As I say, I'm really sorry that we couldn't get to all of them, but thank you to the panel, and thank you to the FIT External Partnership Standing Committee for organising and hosting this, our second International Translation Day webinar. And a huge thank you to Victoria Solon-Kuntz, who has been working on the technology and running it behind the show. So thank you to Victoria. And also, before you go, there's just a couple of things that I would like to remind you. The recording of today's webinar will be on the YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and you will get an email with a certificate of attendance and also the link to the YouTube when that email comes out. And I'd also like to just remind you that the 23rd FIT World Congress will be held in Geneva in Switzerland at the World Intellectual Property Organization in early September 2025. And you can find out more information about the Congress on the Congress website, fit2025.org. So with that, on behalf of FIT, I would like to wish you all a very happy International Translation Day on Monday. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next year. Goodbye.